Welcome back. In sports news, we begin with the domestic league, where league leaders Enyimba this evening suffered their fifth defeat of the season in the Nigeria Professional Football League. El Kanemi Warriors defeated the Abbas side 2-1 with Benjamin Turba and Ife Yarere getting the goals for the Maiduguri-based team. Enyimba got a consolation goal in the 88th minute through substitute Nzube Anezemba. Sharks FC dropped to the relegation zone following a 1-0 defeat to Giwa FC, while another Port Harcourt-based team, Dolphins, moved out of the relegation zone after a 3-1 win against another relegation-threatened side, FC Taraba. Wiki Tourists closed the gap at the top of the table after a 2-0 win over Bayelsa United. In other results today, Abia Warriors beat Warri Wolves FC. Ifeanyuba held Kano Pillars to a 1-0 draw. 3SC beat Aqua United by a lone goal. In the English Premier League, Manchester United's summer signing Anthony Martial this evening continued his fairy tale start with the Red Devils with a brace that helped inspire United to a 3-2 win at Southampton. A £36 million deadline day signing from Monaco made it 3 goals in 2 league games after Graziano Pelle had opened the scoring for Southampton. The result means Louis van Gaal's men are just 2 points adrift of neighbours Manchester City. Daniel Sturridge made his first Liverpool appearance in over 5 months as Brendan Rodgers' side were held to a 1-0 draw at home to Norwich. Tottenham are up to 9th on the league table following a 1-0 win against visiting Crystal Palace at the White Hart Lane. European football governing body UEFA has played down new doping allegations against the professional footballers by the Sunday Times and Germany broadcaster ARD. German broadcaster ARD claims it along with the Sunday Times newspaper. It had seen a UEFA study conducted by 12 European anti-doping labs where more than 4,000 urine samples from about 900 top players between 2008 and 2013, mainly from the European leagues, were tested. It further claims a total of 68 players returned samples showing conspicuous levels of testosterone, which represented a percentage of 7.7 compared to 1.3% of conspicuous levels in older tests. However, UEFA says the study did not provide any scientific evidence of potential doping in football. On to tennis now. Great Britain are through to the Davis Cup final for the first time in 37 years after Andy Murray beat Bernard Tomic of Australia in straight sets to secure a 3-1 victory in Glasgow. Murray was in sensational form and he powered through the final 2 sets to complete a 7-5, 6-3, 6-2 win over the world number 23. Victory capped another wonderful weekend for Murray, who also won his opening singles match on Friday in straight sets and then teamed up with his brother Jamie to win the crucial doubles rubber on Saturday. To the Formula One, Ferrari driver Sebastian Vettel has won the Singapore Grand Prix earlier today as championship leader Lewis Hamilton retired at the Marina Bay circuit. Vettel, the pole sitter, led the race from start to finish in his Ferrari to take the checkered flag ahead of Daniel Ricciardo's Red Bull, with Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari finishing third. The victory is Vettel's third of the season and has closed the gap between him and Hamilton to within 49 points with 6 rounds remaining. The next race is the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka on September 27th.
I know it's only Saturday and obviously the main job is coming tomorrow, but yeah, I had to enjoy the moment when I heard that we made it. It was looking pretty good right from the offset of quali and actually from this morning, to be fair. And then it was, just the car was fantastic to drive. It just got better through qualifying. I think we did the maximum today and surprised by the margin, but I think it just came together. I really had a near perfect lap at the end.
Finally, a day after Japan's stunning victory over South Africa, action resumed in Rugby World Cup Pool B earlier today when Samoa proved too strong for the United States in a 25-16 victory. Samoa had the edge from the start and got the first try when impressive fly half 2CPC's Grubber was touched down by Team Nene Williams, only for an excellent United States break to send Chris Wiles over and cut the Islanders' lead to 14-8 at the break. Captain Officer Trevoranas stretched it with Samoa's second try early in the second half, and 4 penalties by Pissy and another by Michael Stanley ensured that Chris Bowman's effort for the Americans came too late to make a difference. Samoa topped the pool alongside Japan with 4 points, while South Africa have 2. Away from sports news, the situation in Burkina Faso has not improved much since the presidential guard took hostage a country's interim president and prime minister. Junta leader General Gilbert Diendé says the military will remain in power until the country is able to organize fresh elections.
Seemed to have expected the coup, save for the presidential guard. Mediation has begun to help the country get back to political stability. ECOWAS leaders had met with the country's opposition leaders who said the Burkina people, through forgiveness and tolerance, have acted for cohesion and peace and accepted those who are wrong so that they could go towards peaceful elections and towards democracy. They had planned to meet the coup leader, General Gilbert Diendé, before the week ran out. On Saturday, Diendé made the proposal to remain in office until new polls are conducted. Diendé was chief of staff of former President Blaise Compaoré, who was deposed in a popular protest last October. He said the interim president, Michel Kafando, and 2 of his ministers have been released and that he had had no contact with Mr. Compaoré and will do everything to avoid violence that could plunge the country into chaos. The decision to free Kafando appeared to signal possible flexibility by Diendé and the junta ahead of the talks on Friday with the Senegalese president and current chairman of the ECOWAS. The coup was condemned by the United States, former colonial power France, and the United Nations. President Muhammadu Buhari unreservedly condemned the takeover and welcomed the release of the interim president. Nigeria is also supporting efforts by ECOWAS and the African Union to resolve the crisis, promising its fullest possible support to mediators, President Macky Sall and Boni Yayi. The members of the presidential guard set up by Compaoré say they have been unhappy with the new electoral law, banning candidates linked to last year's bid to extend the president's time in office. But the guards have been more concerned about their future. They fear that the election of a new president would signal the end of the unit. That could be possible, as people who backed the overthrow of Mr. Compaoré were keen to see the presidential guard disbanded. But members of the CDP, the former ruling party, are more likely to be happy with what has happened.
Let's talk more now about the situation in Burkina Faso. I'm being joined on the News at 10 by Dr. David Awurawo of the Department of History and International Relations at the University of Lagos. Doctor, you're welcome to the News at 10.
Thank you.
Well, you've been following this story since it happened. And now the military junta says it will not be handing over power until elections are conducted. What do you make of that? Who will be conducting the elections anyway?
To begin with, that's a very shocking demand. We had an interim government in place that was mandated to conduct the elections that were scheduled for October the 11th, that is just a couple of weeks to go. And you have the military coming to say they've seized power and they will conduct the elections and making all sorts of demands. It's shocking. It is high time that these military people know that coups are now anachronistic. The way the international community has responded to the activity, their forceful takeover of power, you know, should indicate very clearly to them that coups are now an anachronism. You know, the United Nations, AU, ECOWAS, EU, United Kingdom, everybody
But you think that message has not been clear enough to the junta? Because as soon as this coup happened, you had these reactions from these groups that you have mentioned.
Yes.
The UN, the AU, ECOWAS, even Nigeria.
Yes. Yes. You know, these military people, there's a way they behave sometimes. They tend to be defiant. And, you know, in the old days, the practice was that the military would say, oh, we have come to defend the people. We have come to defend the country. But this particular act is simply a revelation of, you know, lack of respect and lack of love for the people. Burkina Faso is one of the world's poorest countries. I mean, this kind of crisis is something that that country does not need at this time. And if you look at the demands that they are making, it's simply selfish that the elite, you know, National Guard will be dismantled when the new government comes in, and they don't want that to happen, and consequently they want to seize power. What kind of election they don't want to conduct?
But Doctor, do you believe that the existence of this presidential guard will be detrimental to the new government?
Sure. What happened on Wednesday the 16th is an indication of what will happen when the new government comes and the elite guard remains in place. They simply stormed a cabinet meeting, abducted the president, abducted the prime minister, and then, you know, declared a coup. I mean, that is an indication of the fact that if they are left to remain in power, they will be a threat to the new government, which is why the demands they are making now, the international community should stand firm to reject such demands so that the country can, you know, can return to a smooth civil rule.
Yeah, but what really can the international community do except condemn and advise? They really can't send in troops and say, okay, fine, we're taking out the military so that, you know, a proper government can be put in place.
They can be isolated. Isolated so extremely that they will have no choice than to capitulate. Burkina Faso virtually depends on, you know, the goodwill of the international community to survive. And so if there is a consensus, as there is now, and pressure is mounted, the junta will have no choice than to capitulate. That is what has to happen. If that does not happen, it will be postponing the evil day.
The fear now really is that this does not become another crisis. I mean, there's too many. We have too many crises on the continent, and this one is a potential one happening. Yes,
it's a problem really that Africa faces with democratic transition from one government to another. Blaise Compaoré was there for 27 years. There had to be a mass revolt before he was pushed away. Then an interim government was put in place to conduct election, and now we're having a coup taking place. The country has had so many coups, from Sankara to Compaoré to, you know, all of these coups one after the other, which is why my own suggestion is that the international community should stand firm, isolate this regime, this junta, trying to dictate the pace of things in the country, such that a neutral body can conduct the election, and the elite guard has to be taken away.
And by the international community, that extends to Nigeria.
It does. I mean, Nigeria.
Can we actually isolate Burkina Faso? I mean, what I don't know, what bilateral benefits do we have with them? I know that, you know, all the cooperation happens with the ECOWAS, but what other bilateral benefits are there?
Well, these things don't have to be, you know, looked at purely from the point of view of bilateral benefit to Nigeria. Whatever happens wrong in West Africa, you know, affects Nigeria. I mean, the refugee crisis that hit Europe in the past couple of weeks indicates that what you think is so far away is not so far away after all. So what we need, what has to happen, Nigeria doesn't have to look at the case of Burkina Faso purely from the point of view of what Nigeria has to gain, but from the point of view of the maintenance of regional stability. And of course, it can't be done by one country alone. There has to be, you know, a coming together of all of these countries I just mentioned before. You know, the international organizations, all of these countries have to come together to mount pressure on the junta, such that, you know, the interim government can be restored and stability can come back, you know, to Burkina Faso.
Dr. Awarawo, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10. I appreciate you all being here. I've been speaking with Dr. David Awarawo of the Department of History and International Relations at the University of Lagos. Now, Pope Francis is in the Cuban capital, Havana, where he's been celebrating a mass in front of thousands of people. The Pope, who is on a trip to Cuba and the US, has been credited with helping with the recent renewal of diplomatic ties between the two countries. During his homily, he said that Christians are constantly called to set aside their own wishes and desires, their pursuit of power, and to look instead to those who are most vulnerable. And after the Pope met Fidel Castro at his house in Havana for about 30 minutes, both men were said to have exchanged books as gifts. However, dissidents were shouting and attempting to distribute flyers at the edge of the Revolution Square and were arrested by security forces. And the main news again. The Senate President, Bukola Saraki, is expected to appear tomorrow at the Code of Conduct Tribunal as directed by the judge. Well, the case is coming up just as the appeal court in Abuja. It will be heard tomorrow. The Senate President is being tried for alleged false declaration of assets when he was governor of Kwara State and also as governor. But the trial is going on despite a federal high court order stopping it. Also today, the People's Democratic Party accused President Muhammadu Buhari of dictatorship, a view the APC dismissed as a distraction. And Pope Francis today celebrated a mass attended by thousands of people in Havana, the Cuban capital, after which he met with former Cuban leader Fidel Castro on his first visit to the communist-ruled island to further help strengthen diplomatic ties with the U.S. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Good night.